Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel. Today I wanted to look at some more online tournament results and see what decks are doing good in these online tournaments. I've seen a few interesting stuff happen here in some of these recent tournaments. I did want to look at them and highlight some of the cool decks that have made top 8 and just kind of see where the online meta is right now. I do have two cups this weekend. I got back-to-back cups, so I definitely wanted to kind of look at the meta here, see what the deck lists are looking like right now for this past week into the online tournament scene, and see what's being played. And of course, if you have any tournaments for yourself coming up this weekend too, and if you want to kind of see what decks are doing good in the meta, or maybe you want to get an idea of what you want to play, you can definitely hopefully use this video to help you out and kind of just see where the meta is right now in the online tournament scene. And I'm excited here to look at some of the lists, because like I said, there are a few decks that I noticed coming up with the tournaments for this video, where I was like, okay, there's some cool decks here in top 8 to highlight. And of course, if you're new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 16,000 subs now, and if you go on to enjoy the video, leave a like, and I'll leave a link to Limitless here down in the description below. If you want to go play in any online tournament for yourself, a link to Play.Limitless here will be in the description, so check it out if you haven't already. But we'll start off here with the Battle Park tournament. So the winning deck was Miraidon. So Miraidon's a pretty good deck for these best-of-1 tournaments, I want to say. Also, there's not a whole lot of Charizard in some of these tournaments right now, and that's a good thing for Miraidon. Miraidon is a very strong and aggressive and fast deck. In a best-of-1, you can literally just win the game because you just donked your opponent, or you can put on so much early-game pressure that it just kind of dwarfs your opponent. And that's kind of the thing with Miraidon. And, of course, if there's not a whole lot of Charizard going around, then it's a good thing because Miraidon does really struggle versus Charizard. We can look at this list here. It does play the Thorns, the Double Hands, the Raichu, the Blood Moon, the Squawkabilly, and the Mew. Just kind of a, the more traditional Miraidon build right now. It did win a tournament, so it did do pretty good here in this tournament, and especially for the online meta, it seems pretty good. The only thing with this Miraidon list, there is no Iono in the deck. It's just Research, Arven, and Boss. So no Iono, no Hand Disruption, just going all in and just trying to be aggressive and fast. And then, of course, in the second place deck was a Chien-Pao deck. Chien-Pao feels like the dark horse of the format right now. I don't really see a whole lot of Chien-Pao being talked about or even seeing play at the current moment in our format. I don't really see a whole lot of Chien-Pao going around, but I do think Chien-Pao has potential to be a really good deck in the format at the moment. I just don't see a whole lot of people playing it because I think the deck is truly like a strong deck right now. It does do good against Charizard. I think its Dragapult matchup is a lot closer than you think. I think you're decent into Gardevoir. You are an Iron Hands deck at the end of the day, and that's ultimately what Chien-Pao does best. And looking at the Chien-Pao list here, the only thing to note is there's a Roxanne in the deck, which is something you don't usually see within Chien-Pao. Usually it's an Iono, but Iono's not even that popular in Chien-Pao either way. But this one plays Roxanne, which Roxanne's honestly not that bad. When I tried out the Roxanne in the Dunsparce build in my recent video I did on Monday, I noticed that Roxanne actually was kind of helpful. I mean, being able to refresh your hand and draw 6 cards is really, really good. So maybe Roxanne and Chien-Pao could be something to look at going forward. Also plays a Silene in the deck here, which is another very interesting card to see within the pound list. But yeah, Chien-Pao definitely a really interesting deck at the moment that I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on and aren't giving us much attention. It did unfortunately lose to Miraidon in the finals, which is just kind of a bad matchup for Chien-Pao. It is what it is. There is a Guardian top 4, of course. Gardevoir, the BDIF right now, is built here, plays the Enhanced Hammers, got a Devo in the deck, plays one Fluttermane, no Klefki in the deck, does have Cresselia, Drifloon, the one Bravery Charm as opposed to 2, which is interesting. Yeah, there you go. Just play double Nest Ball 2. Yep, seems good. 3 Dark Energy, though, so really heavy on the Dark Energy, really trying to make sure that you can take advantage of the Munkidori. The next list here we got was a Charizard Dragapult deck, but there is a few things to note. There's a few tech cards in the deck. It's Charizard Dragapult with some spicy stuff. There's a Luminous Energy in the deck, and there's a Canceling Cologne in the deck. So it's kind of like the Tord build here. Looking at it, does play Turo and Kieran, 3 Arven, 2 Iono. It's got the 2-2-1 Dragapult line. More of a Charizard deck. It's got the 3-1-2 Charizard line, but of course does have some very interesting tech cards in the deck, like the Luminous Energy. Yeah, Luminous Energy is interesting. I guess you can use it with Dragapult. Technically, you can use it with Lumineon. I don't know how often that'll come up, but you could go Luminous Energy to Lumineon, evolve into Charizard, put 2 Fire Energy on Lumineon, and then go Aqua Return back into the deck. That's like a very weird play that I don't know how often that'll come up, but, that is an option, I guess. The Luminous Energy is definitely interesting to see within the deck here over the double basic Psychic Energy. But again, it does play that Canceling Clone in the deck to help beat the Mimikyus, beat the Cornerstone Ogerpon, which isn't even that bad when you have the Dracloak as an attacker, and even the Charmeleon. But I guess having that extra bit of insurance against Mimikyu is nice. And yeah, Charizard Dragapult, like I said, it's a really strong deck right now. I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, if you saw my last video here, you'll know that I am really enjoying the deck right now. There's a Palkia deck here in the top 8, which is interesting. It's a Palkia Iron Valiant deck here. It's kind of a deck we haven't really seen as much of. But Palkia V-Star still is in the format, still really strong. It's a great attacker. Of course, it can put on a lot of pressure in combination with Radiant Greninja. And this one is just all about swinging with Palkia and using the Iron Valiant to support your damage output. I guess one thing to note, there's no like extra draw engine in the deck. There's a Mew in the deck and a Greninja, but there's no like Bibarel or anything. Just kind of all in on the 2 prize stackers. There's a Blood Moon Ursaluna in the deck. But yeah, just relying on the Iron Valiant to help set up damage for your Palkia. And I mean, it is a pretty strong archetype when it gets going because, I mean, it is hard to play around Palkia when you can't bench Pokemon. Like, a lot of decks do rely on benching Pokemon. And when you can't do that because Iron Valiant punishes you, or Palkia punishes you for benching Pokemon, it can get really scary. And then, of course, a lot of the damage can get fixed here with Tachyon Bit. So really, really cool deck and cool to see it made top 8. There was a Raging Bolt deck in top 8 here. Pretty traditional build, apart from the fact that it plays 2 Lost City, which I didn't even see. Lost City is definitely interesting. I guess that would help against Gardevoir quite a bit. Raging Bolt has been trying to figure out how to beat the Gardevoir matchup a bit more effectively. We've been seeing Jamming Towers see some play in the deck, and now we're seeing Lost City, which is definitely an interesting inclusion because you can, of course, Lost City the Fluttermane, the Drifloon, the Screamtail, Monkey Dory, all that stuff. You can just Lost City away all of Gardevoir's relevant attackers. Raging Bolt doesn't play Super Rod, so if they like Lost City or Raging Bolt or Ogerpon, you don't really care because you're not playing Rod anyway. It's not like you're getting them back. Well, I guess there's 1 Rod in the deck. Actually, I lied. There is a Super Rod in the deck. Okay, never mind. There is a Rod. After all, I didn't see that. But still, at the end of the day, you don't mind losing your Pokemon when you have such a high quantity of them. And you're putting on so much aggressive pressure, it can really slow down the Gardevoir player quite a bit. So Lost City could be pretty good within the Raging Bolt deck. Who knows? So, of course, Regidrago in the top 8 here. Regidrago is kind of the, I don't want to say the most overhyped deck in the format right now, but it does feel like Drago is getting all of the hype right now. It is a strong deck. It's very fast. That turn 2 Dragapult potential is pretty insane. And Regidrago is a very scary card to play against when it does have all these attacks to choose from. A lot of the Drago lists, though, have been cutting the Noivern out. You can see this list here does not play Noivern. I think the reason why there's no more Noivern in Regidrago is because you're not really relying on it anymore to beat Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt is winnable. You have stuff like Giratina on the deck you can use to one-shot the bolts. You even have Goodra, which can be somewhat effective in that matchup, but for the most part, the Noivern strategy just doesn't work anymore because you're not really trying to play into the Noivern as much as you used to, which is why the Drago is starting to cut the Noivern out of the deck. And then finally in the top 8 here, we have another Charizard Dragapult deck. This one is more like the Tord build, it looks like. Or, close enough, I guess. Doesn't play the TM Evo, but does kind of rely more on the Charizard. Plays that very thin Dragapult line. Only plays the one of Dragapult EX in the deck. Got the 4 Arven, the 2 Boss, 2 Turo, 1 Iono is a little interesting. It's not as much draw to work with when you just have the 1 Iono. It is interesting to see just 1 Iono. It does play actually a lot of energy, 6 Fire and 2 Psychic. So playing 8 energy in total. Pretty high amount of energy. Plays an Earthen Vessel, too, to help find the Psychic energy to chain the Dragapult attacks. That's interesting. Also plays a Switch in the deck, so really not trying to lose to Stall and Control. But yeah, that was that tournament here, the Battle Park tournament. Moving on, we got the Redacted tournament, which, as you can see, once again, Miraidon won. So Miraidon has been winning a few online tournaments recently, which is actually very interesting, considering I think a lot of people would argue how good or bad the deck is right now in the current format. Depends on how much Charizard you expect. If there's more Gardevoir and stuff, Miraidon's going to be a lot better. Actually, I think this might just be the exact same 60 as the list we looked at that won the Battle Park tournament. Looking at it here. Yeah, it might be, it's the same person too. Arctic won back-to-back tournaments with the Miraidon deck. Look at that. Miraidon did win 2 tournaments in a row by the same person. That's crazy. There is a Guardian the finals, obviously. Did lose to Miraidon. The Scardy build here plays the double Fluttermane and the Mimikyu. So no Drifloon in the deck, relying a little bit more on the element of control with the Fluttermanes and the Mimikyu in the deck. Mimikyu, I think, is going to be going back into a lot of the Guardy lists going forward. It does seem like a pretty strong card. Also plays Luxurious Cape and, of course, has that TM Devo in the deck to be even more annoying. So, yeah. There you go. Gardevoir still doing good. And then I guess the Control Gardevoir would struggle a lot more to Miraidon, obviously. And then, of course, we got another Guardy list here in the top 4. This one also does not play Drifloon. Yes, a Drifloon list build of Gardevoir. Once again, this one has Crisis Punch in the deck, though. Plays 3 different TMs, has that Crisis Punch, which can be cool in Gardevoir. It lets you do that late game 280 damage when there's 1 prize remaining. So cool stuff, cool stuff. Definitely interesting technology. You can find it with Arven, obviously, really easy. Yeah, no Drifloon. So 2 Gardevoir lists here in the top 4 with no Drifloon in the deck. Interesting. We got our Raging Bolt in top 4. Probably did lose to Gardevoir. Pretty bad matchup, I would say. This one does play some interesting cards. It plays the Cornerstone Ogerpon and the Sandy Shocks. Also has a lot of tool cards here. We got the triple Ancient Booster Capsule and the Bravery Charm for that extra bulk. Ancient Booster Capsule does give Raging Bolt 300 HP. I don't know where the 10 damage makes a difference, but it could make a difference. There's a lot of tools in deck, 4 of them. And then it's also got Counter Catcher and triple Palpad in the deck. So the one thing to note, there's no Stadium in the deck. There's no Jamming Tower or Pokestop. It just plays more support with the triple Palpad. Also plays a Counter Catcher in the deck, which is interesting. I guess if you like set up a 1 prizer and they knock it out, you can go Counter Catcher up a 2 prizer, which is kind of interesting. That could be good in the mirror, which is actually interesting, so that's cool. Got another Miraidon here in the top 8. This one does have some differences from the other build that won the tournament. For starters, it plays double Squawkabilly, really trying to capitalize on that turboness that the deck gains. Also plays 1 Iono and run Research, so it does have the option to Iono, but also does still play the 1 of Research. And plays a Future Booster Capsule, which does let Iron Hands amp Pidgeot and Palkia and Lugia for a knockout, so that's a very relevant tool card to see. I guess then you can't put Heavy Baton on, but the Ancient Booster, or the Future Booster Capsule is a very cool inclusion because, yeah, it does let you do that very relevant damage with Ampy very much. So another Guardy here in the top 8. This one does have the Drifloon, however. Also plays the 1 of Devo, has the Unfair Stamp and stuff. And we got another Raging Bolt in top 8. So, yeah, it's an interesting top 8. Miraidon, Raging Bolt, and Gardevoir made up the entirety of this top 8 pretty much. This Raging Bolt build does have the Pokestops, got the catchers in the deck. Plays an Enhanced Hammer. Yeah, that's about it, really, just for this Raging Bolt list. That's an interesting top 8. A lot of Miraidon and Raging Bolt and Gardevoir. And then finally here in the top 8, we got that Frostlass control deck. This is an interesting archetype. This one did do good at NEIC and did kind of make a name for itself. But yeah, the idea of this deck is you have sneaky cards like Mawile. You have Noivern in the deck. Noivern obviously being really good against Raging Bolt. You have the Monkey Dories to heal. You're kind of just being like a Frostlass stall control deck is basically how this deck works. I mean, it's not really like a control deck, but it does have control elements in the deck when you do have cards like Mawile and Noivern in the deck here. Also plays a Minior in the deck with a super effective Glasses package to, I guess, go after Iron Hands, which I guess can be an issue for the deck. Does have the Unfair Stamp, A-Spec 2 Devos. Yeah, Frostlass control, I guess is what you want to call it, can be a pretty scary deck to play against, I'm not going to lie. I've played against it before. This build is scary. The downside of this deck, though, it doesn't really have like a draw engine. You do have that Rotom, which is good, but usually you can go after the Rotom, take an easy 2 free prizes. Then you get punished a bit harder by like getting Iono'd or Stamped, but for the most part, this deck can be very sneaky to play against. And I mean, when you're playing against Frostlass, you do have to be very careful with how you play, especially if your deck does have a lot of abilities in it. And this one did end up getting top 8 in the tournament here. Would have had to go up against Raging Bolt, Guardy. I don't know how good it is in a Gardevoir. In all honesty, I don't really know the lines against Guardy. Miraidon, I would imagine, is an okay matchup. You do have that Minior Glasses, and Miraidon, like most of their deck has abilities. Next up, we do have the Reach for the Stars tournament here. And the winning deck was, of course, good old Lugia. I think Lugia is kind of just the deck everyone can agree right now that this deck has potential to be broken if you get to play the game. And, you know, sometimes you get to play the game, sometimes you don't. This Lugia build does play the Wellspring Ogerpon, so potentially a lot of Lugia decks are now putting the Ogerpon back into the deck here to be sneaky and take those sneaky KOs out of nowhere. Now, one thing I did want to highlight here, one thing that really caught my attention was the Toedscruel deck. There's a Toedscruel Ogerpon deck here in the finals. Unfortunately, did lose to Lugia. I would imagine that matchup is kind of shaky. If Lugia literally just sets up against you turn 2, I would imagine you're unfavored because they have Cinccino, right? Cinccino just goes straight through your Toedscruels. But other than that, it's a really cool deck here. It plays a Legacy Energy in the deck as the A-Spec tool card of choice. Also does have the other Toedscruel in the deck too. It's a very cool 60. I wanted to highlight this. This one almost won an online tournament, so Toedscruel almost winning a tournament is really, really cool. I've done a video on this deck before, not the same list with like the Legacy Energy, but the idea of Toedscruel Ogerpon is really, really cool, and I'm happy to see that it actually ended up doing pretty good here in this online tournament, almost winning it, hitting a pretty bad matchup in Lugia, and I would imagine like Lugia probably just ran the Toedscruel deck over, which is super unfortunate, but it's cool to see that the deck it made all the way to the finals. There's a Lost Tina in top 4. If you saw in the last deck video tournament deck video thing, you saw that we talked about Tina a bit, and there's a lot of Lost Tina do good in the online tournaments. I don't know if Tina is doing as good anymore. Maybe it's cooled off a little bit. This build plays the Ursaluna and the Iron Leaves. Also plays an Iono and a Roxanne split in the deck. But yeah, Lost Tina could be good right now. Again, it was doing really good in the last video, so maybe the deck was primed for a rebound. We got a Dragapult Xatu deck here in the top 4. Very interesting list. I mean, it's kind of the... feels like the underdog version of Dragapult right now. I know a lot of people are high on the Dragapult Charizard, Dragapult Pidgeot. Lost Bolt's kind of fallen off a little bit. Haven't really been seeing as much of that, but Dragapult Xatu still exists, and I still play against it a fair bit on the ladder. This build does not play the Radiant Charizard, plays an Alakazam, plays a Klefki in the deck, which is a cool inclusion. I guess starting Klefki can be very annoying for the opponent because you can slow him down a little bit while you kind of set your board up. It also plays a double Lance in the deck as a supporter of choice, so really cool stuff. The Klefki's definitely interesting for sure. We got a couple Lugias here in the top 8. So Lugia did really good this tournament. We got another Lugia playing Fluttermane and has the Wellspring Ogerpon. We got another Lugia here, but below it, this one plays the Earthen Vessel Lightning Energy build. So leaning more into the Iron Hands. No Cinccino, no Ogerpon. Just trying to use Iron Hands. Does play Drapion in the deck, which is really helpful against Gardevoir. Plays Roseanne's backup. So you have like 4 energy in total to use Iron Hands, 2 Lightning, a Legacy, and then, of course, that Roseanne, which can recover the Legacy energy for your Iron Hands. We got a Guardian top 8 here still. Gardevoir, obviously, is like BDIF, not surprised seeing it in top 8. This one is playing the Hyper Roma. It also plays a lot of interesting tools. It's got the Luxurious Cape, the Devo, and one Evo. Does not play Bravery Charm at all, and also does play, of course, that Hyper Roma. Also not playing Drifloon. I guess more of like a control-y build. You got the Mimikyu, you got the Fluttermane, the Screamtail, and then the one of Klefki in this build. And then finally, we got another Dragapult here in the top 8. This one was good old Dragapult with Pidgeot. No Charizard in the deck, just straight Dragapult Pidgeot. Plays an Alakazam in the deck. Looks like the Ace-Spec was also the Neo Upper Energy, the broken Ace-Spec card. Yeah, Dragapult Pidgeot, to me, if you're going to play this, you would want to play the Mela as opposed to Charizard build. Which I don't play Mela because you don't need Mela in the deck. And then this one obviously has to play Mela because you're not playing Charizard. You don't have that extra bit of energy excel or that backup attacker that can power itself up. Next up, we got the Pumpkin Amy tournament, and the winning deck was none other than Dragapult Charizard. And an interesting 60 here. It's got the 2-1-2 split of like double Dragapult, double Charizard. Plays only a 1-1 Pidgeot. So a bit more of a greedier line of Pidgeot, not playing the 2-2 line. Because it does have some interesting tech cards. We see the normal stuff, the Arvid, Iono, Kirin Turo, but plays double Energy Search in the deck alongside 6 Fire and 2 Psychic, and plays a TM at Devo and an Unfair Stamp within the deck. So not really trying to abuse the power of the Evo, the TM Evo, or anything that we've been seeing in the Dragapult list. Just kind of more teched out. The one with Pidgeot's definitely interesting. It's a very greedy line for sure, but I mean, you know, it's not that big of a deal. Like, Pidgeot usually, like, depending on what you're playing against, usually can stay on the board for a little bit until it gets knocked out. And then maybe at that point, if you have Bibarel and a Dracloak in play, you'd have enough draw. It did win the tournament, so there's that. It did take down a Charizard Pidgeot in the finals, which I think is pretty feasible. I mean, Dragapult is favored into Charizard, obviously. Not surprised to see Charizard potentially get taken down here. The matchup is a bit more favored for Charizard Dragapult as opposed to straight Charizard. This Charizard deck has the Turo Kirin package, plays a Canceling Cologne and an Enhanced Hammer, so trying to get around Mimikyu, and then obviously trying to beat the Cornerstone Ogerpon with that Canceling Clone, which can be pretty annoying to deal with. We got a couple of Roaring Moon here in the top 8, which is interesting. So we got one Turbo Moon playing the double Baby Moon. It's got the bundle in the deck, Fluttermane, triple Pokestop. Yeah, just more Turbo, Roy Moon EX. No Darkrai or anything in the deck here, it looks like. Just trying to go all in on the Moon. And then, of course, we got another Moon deck here. This one plays the Darkrai and has the Water Energy. This has been like the more normal version of the Turbo Moon deck we've been seeing with the Darkrai, the Water Energy, Greninja package, stuff like that. Yeah, Roy Moon is not a bad Turbo deck. Is it better than Raging Bolt or Miraidon even? It's, I don't know, maybe in the middle of those two decks. Like, this deck is better than a Charizard, where Miraidon is worse than a Charizard. And this deck, I mean, debatably could be worse in a Gardevoir because you don't have Iron Hands, right? You do have a lot of Dark Pokemon, but just because you have Dark Pokemon doesn't mean you just flat out beat Gardevoir, obviously. Because you still have liabilities. So, yeah, it's interesting. We got an Entei Valiant in top 8 here. A deck that I haven't really seen in a long time, but Entei Iron Valiant can still do numbers. I guess it did end up getting a good placement in this tournament. Really cool 60. something that I've been kind of looking into. It's not playing Gouging Fire, just flat out NTV as the main attacker in the deck, like the old-fashioned Entei deck from the Paradox meta. Also has the Moltres, the Radiant Charizard in the deck for a little bit of backup attack. Plays double Devo, plays 4 Carmine, and a Squawkabilly. So really trying to capitalize on either turn 1 donk potential or turn 1 just hit hard, get damage on the board with the Iron Valiant. Pretty interesting stuff, because yeah, you can draw a lot of cards with the Squawkabilly and the Carmine. So lets you pull off some pretty insane combos really fast, especially if you're going second, obviously, with the deck. So that's cool. It got top 8. We've got a Snorlax in top 8 here. This one's got the Cornerstone Ogerpon in the deck, the Mimikyu, the Shiyu. Yeah, it's good old-fashioned Snorlax. Everyone's favorite deck to play against. Still doing good in the online tournament. See, no surprise there, because it is Snorlax at the end of the day. It's always going to be a strong deck, whether you like it or not. Still here, still exists. Just depends on if people want to play it. There's a couple more Lugias here to round out the top 8. We got another build here with Cinccino in Iron Hands. No Wellspring Ogerpon in this one. And then we got another Lugia deck here to look at here real quick that made the top 8. This one, well, look at that. Does play a Wellspring Ogerpon. Also plays that Roseanne's backup within the deck. So there you go. A couple more Lugias here in the top 8. Next up, we got the Sunny Weekly Tournament. The winning deck was the Ancient Box deck, actually. It was Ancient Box. I guess it kind of is an Ancient Box deck. Yeah, it's Ancient Box. There's no Koraidon or Tusk or Walking Wake in the deck. Does play 1 Roy Mooney X, though, and can attack with Roy Mooney X. Plays 4 copies of Dark Patch. So, can still get the job done. So, yeah, cool stuff. The Turbo, I don't even know what you would call it. Turbo Roaring Moon Ancient Box deck. It did win the tournament. Actually took down Lost Tina in the finals, which I'm not surprised to see. Tina is pretty unfavored into, like, Roaring Moon. This one does play Jamming Tower and double Temple of Sinnoh. So, a little bit more teched out in the Stadium department here for the Lost Tina deck. And then, of course, there was another Miraidon here in the top 4. Same 60 we saw win those other tournaments, it looks like. Same person, too, Arctic here, getting top 4 in this tournament. Then we got a Raging Bolt in the top 4. Also, this one plays Penny in the deck and plays the double Lost City we saw earlier. So, once again, trying to be a little bit more aggressive in a Gardevoir with those Lost Cities. And obviously can come up and just not just Gardevoir, better in all kinds of matchups, but really helpful in a Guardy. There's an Arc deck here in the top 8 here. Kind of an Arc control deck. You can see here, we got some control elements. We got the Cornerstone Ogerpon in the deck. Really good against Charizard. Also plays the double Eerie in the deck, too, to get rid of, like, candies and stuff. Also plays the Charon's Care and has the Judge in the deck for the little bit of extra support. Because just plays 4 Iono and 2 Eerie. So really trying to, like, capitalize on the disruption elements with the Eerie's. Plays 3 Jamming Tower, too, so really aggressive in a Gardevoir. Has Tomb in the deck. Tomb's really good right now, in my opinion, in Arc Piles. Yeah, really interesting 60. Also plays Legacy Energy as a spec, not opting for Belt or Prime Catcher or Hero's Cape, playing Legacy Energy to try to deny that prize card. It can also act as like an extra energy, I guess, for like the Ogerpon. This is really cool. Cool stuff to see. We got a Snorlax here within top 8 once again. Kind of similar to what we saw earlier with the Mimikyu and the Cornerstone Ogerpon. Not really much to look at. We got a Shenpao in top 8 here. So, yeah, Shenpao still getting some top 8 placements. Like I said, I think the deck is still pretty decent. It probably did lose to the Snorlax. Does play Silene and Prime Catcher, and that does help a little bit, but not by a lot against Snorlax. But, yeah, like I said, though, Shenpao is still a really strong deck right now that I do feel like is a little bit slept on within the current format. And then finally here, there is, of course, a Regidrago in top 8. Once again, a lot of people are really high on this deck. You can see this Drago deck, once again, not playing the Noivern in the deck. A lot of lists have been cutting the Noivern. Does play the Giratina V in the deck for that Shred option. Can help a little bit more against Mimikyu and other control decks. And, of course, if Gardevoir is going to be playing Mimikyu now, you might want to play a Shred attacker because it can be difficult for Drago to deal with Mimikyu. I mean, you can go around Mimikyu by using Dragapult, obviously, but having the ability to just flat out attack it never really hurt anyone either, so that's interesting. And then next up, we got the Late Night Special number 4 here. This one was the biggest tournament of the week, and look at that, the deck that won was Miraidon. So that is, what, the 3rd tournament that was won by Miraidon. So Miraidon has won a lot of online tournaments this past week, which is interesting. I guess it's just kind of because there's not a whole lot of Charizard. We have seen a few Charizard, obviously. Mostly been Charizard Dragapult, which I would imagine Miraidon can have a better time into because that deck doesn't rely as heavily on the Charizard. It doesn't have as heavier as a line of Charizard, so that could be a thing. So Miraidon list does play the 4 Arven, 3 Boss, no Research or Iono. Also plays a Morpeko here in the deck, which is an interesting option. Let's look at the top card of your deck. You'll know if you have an energy or not. That can be kind of cute. So it did win the tournament, which is interesting. Took down a Raging Bolt in the finals. Now that's really interesting. I would imagine Raging Bolt is favored into Miraidon. We see another Raging Bolt list here playing at the double Lost City. So maybe Lost City Raging Bolt is now going to be the way to go with Raging Bolt, because that's what the third one we've seen now. Yeah, maybe Lost City Bolt's the way to go. Plays an Enhanced Hammer 2 in the deck. So that's cool. And then we got a Guardian top 4 here. Looks like Scardy with double Monkey. Plays the Mimikyu. No Drifloon once again. So we've been seeing a little bit more Drifloon and less Gardevoir. Does play the Luxurious Cape, the Hyper Aroma, the Devo, and the Evo. It might be similar actually to that Gardevoir list we saw a little bit earlier in one of the past tournaments. Kind of the same lineup of cards here. So it might just be the same 60 actually. We got a Regidrago in top 4. This one does have the Hawlucha in the deck. That's the tech card I've seen some Drago lists talk about, is with Hawlucha, you can actually play it down, and you can use it with Dragapult to knock out 70 HP Pokemon. Really helpful against knocking out Ralts and Charmanders and Dreepies and stuff like that. So it lets you be a little bit more aggressive with your Dragapult knockouts, and it lets you take out the threat before they become an actual big threat. Especially if you combine it with Prime Catcher, you can like knock out double basic. Like if your opponent goes double Charmander turn 1 or something, you go like Prime Catcher, Hawlucha, knock out the Charmander that you Prime Catchered up, and then knock out the other Charmander with the damage from the Hawlucha. So the Hawlucha is something I have been seeing some Regidrago lists incorporate recently. Plays the Tina and the Gudra. Again, no Noivern in the deck. Yeah, I like the 60 a lot. We got another Charizard Dragapult here that made top 8. I don't know why I said other, but we see it here. Similar to what Tord played again, the Evo in the deck, the 5 Fire, 2 Psychic Energy, the Unfair Stamp, plays the Turo and the Kieran, stuff like that. Does play the thicker line of Charizard as opposed to the thinner line of Dragapult. We got another Lost Tina in top 8. So I guess Lost Tina has been kind of holding on a little bit this past week. It didn't do as good, I would say, as the week prior in the last video we did, but I guess there are still some results here for good old Lost Tina. Yeah, it's a pretty simple Tina list here. It's got the Artisan, the Temple of Sinnoh. Nothing too crazy in the Tina deck. We got another Guardy here, of course, in top 8 because Gardevoir is broken. This one plays Drifloon, plays Mimikyu also, and plays the Temple of Sinnoh, double Bravery Charm, and the TM Devo within the deck here. Plays Cresselia. Actually has a lot of different options here. The Cresselia, the Drifloon, the Screamtail, the Mimikyu, the Fluttermane and stuff. We've got our first Lost Box deck. I think this is the first one we've looked at in this video. We haven't really seen a Lost Box deck. We've seen Tina, but not Lost Box. This one is the Lost Zone deck with the Roaring Moon. So I think Roaring Moon going back in the deck makes sense right now. I mean, it's not terrible in a Gardevoir. Also really good into the stuff like the Dragapults and the Charizards of the world. This one doesn't play the Raikou or anything. Just plays Hands Moon and Blood Moon Ursaluna. But does play 4 Pokestop. So, yeah, really trying to go super turbo with the 4 Pokestop there. So, trying to be more aggressive, trying to get that turn 1 Mirage Gate if possible. Cool stuff, cool stuff. I did want to highlight one thing here. This tournament was, the time of recording this, I think it was yesterday, on the Wednesday. I wanted to highlight, somebody got 9th place with the Dragapult Charizard 60 that I posted on Twitter, did a video on. So I did want to highlight that. They almost managed to get top 8. So I did want to highlight this person's run here in the tournament. It's the same 60 that I showed off and like talked about in the last video. So I would imagine like after even the tweet itself blew up. The tweet has like 1,000 likes or whatever. But I mean, I would imagine we're going to see a little bit more of the Dragapult Charizard list that I've been playing a lot more in these online tournaments. I think a lot more people are trying to play the deck now and trying to get more reps in with the deck, and trying to see if it lives up to the hype that because I've been really hyping the deck up, obviously, because I've been doing really good with it. I've been really enjoying the deck. It's a very interesting archetype, and it's something that I've just been having a blast playing. So I know that a lot of people might have seen the tweet in the video and are going to try the deck out for themselves in these tournaments. And I think the best placing one so far that we've seen did, unfortunately, a bubble at 9th in the tournament. I think it's a bubble. They did go... They went 8-2. So I'm pretty sure it was a bubble, right? Yeah, it was a bubble because the other people above would have went 8-2, but they would have lost a round, so it would have been 8-3. So there was it might have been a bubble. So unfortunately, either there's a bubble or they had to play in the tie bracket to try to make top 8. Next up here, we got the free entry at Deck Out Monday tournament here. The winning deck was Lugia with the Earthen Vessel in the deck, playing in the Iron Hands. No Cinccino, just play the Weird Ear. Also has a Fluttermane in the deck too, to be a little bit more annoying. So that Lugia deck won that tournament. And another Miraidon in the finals here. Kind of interesting that Miraidon lost to Lugia. I don't even know how that's possible, because I feel like Miraidon, like if Miraidon is going to beat any deck 80% of the time, I would imagine it's Lugia. I guess maybe like maybe they started Miraidon and like they opened Fluttermane and it like derailed from there. That could have been what happened. This Miraidon, no research, no Iono, just 4 Arvid and 3 Bosses Order. And then we got a Goldengo here in top 4. I love me some Goldengo. I mean, it's just kind of it's an okay deck. It's not the worst deck you can play right now. It's not the best deck either. It's just Goldengo, does Goldengo things. Pretty cool stuff. Happy to see a Goldengo here do good. Honestly, looking at the top 4, I think Goldengo would have been favored against the 2 decks in the finals. Like, actually, Goldengo's decent in a Miraidon, and I think it's pretty good in a Lugia. If they're not playing Cinccino, I think the Lugia matchup is very free. I think the matchup's insanely free if they're not playing Cinccino. The matchup should be perfect. Miraidon's not a bad matchup either for the deck. Maybe they hit the Guardy player or something. I don't know. Or I guess no, they wouldn't have. Maybe the Goldengo deck just bricked against Miraidon or something. I don't know. This Guardiolus plays a Tomb and a Mew and a Squawkabilly, so a little bit more teched out here with some of the options. No Drifloon either. Just Screamtail and Fluttermane. Double Munkidori, of course. Cool stuff. That's interesting. We got a couple more Lugias here in the top 8. Just Lugia doing Lugia things. Another Lugia playing the Earthen Vessel in the deck with the double lightning and the hands. Plays the Weird Ear, no Cinccino. And we got another Lugia here in the top 8. This one does play the Cinccino, however, within the 60. And we got back-to-back Chien-Pao Baxcaliburs here in the tournament, too. We got the Chien-Pao. Ooh, it looks like the Chien-Pao list that won the Malaysia Championship. Playing the double Dunsparce, has the hands, the Rotom, the Force Seal, the 2 Arven. Yeah, it looks like it's a 60 from the Malaysia tournament. It's a cool 60 for sure. It's cool to see that the deck did have a top 8 result post that tournament. And then, of course, we got another Chien-Pao list here. This one, a little bit more traditional, playing the Bibarel engine instead of the Dunsparce engine. And just kind of the more traditional build of C-Pao. And that was that tournament, and that was it for the online tournaments for this week. Some interesting results for sure. Things I wanted to highlight. Miraidon won 3 tournaments. Yeah, Miraidon won 3 online tournaments this past week, so Miraidon tore it up. And now that could just be because of lack of Charizard. Outside of like a few Charizard Dragapults, there wasn't as much Charizard in these tournaments. There's one in the finals, like a more traditional Charizard. But again, if it's like Dragapult Charizard, it's not as threatening for Miraidon. I would imagine that matchup is like slightly more winnable. A big highlight I wanted to mention here was, of course, Toedscruel almost winning an online tournament. That's really cool to see. Toedscruel, Ogerpon is a really cool deck idea. So to see it have a decent result is kind of sick to see. Maybe we'll see more in the future. Who knows? I wanted to highlight that. Another cool rogue deck was that Froslass deck. Obviously, that Arc Control deck was kind of cool too. But yeah, there you go. Those are the online tournaments for this week. Again, if you're looking to play in any Cups of Challenges this weekend, I'm sure these online tournament results could have swayed your opinion on what to play. Will Miraidon transfer well into the Cup and Challenge meta this weekend? I don't think so, because there has been a lot more Charizard at the Cups and Challenges. I've seen a lot of Charizard on Twitter this past week. So Miraidon, well, it's tearing up the online tournament scene. I'm not too sure it's as good in the IRL scene due to the sheer amount of Charizard that's seen play right now at these Cups and Challenges. Because I've seen a lot of people post that they've been winning Cups and Challenges with Charizard. So I don't know, man. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. I'll leave a link again to Play.limos down below if you want to play an online tournament for yourself. Catch y'all later on in the video, and I'll see you. Bye-bye.